Welcome back, everyone. We are moving forward with part 2 of the Youth-Led Fact-Fed Annual Conference, and we'll be covering e-cigarettes and vaping, and we'll be reaching the truth today about e-cigarettes and vaping. We spend a lot of time talking about vaping because this has been, unfortunately, a big issue with young people. The Vape Pre virtual field trips spend 100% of the time talking about vaping, and I think this will be really helpful for you guys. But in this part, if you're following along in your REACH guidebook, and remember there is a digital copy on our website, projectpreventar.org, we are covering e-cigarettes and vaping today. We have several different things to share with you, which I think will kind of help dispel some of those myths about vaping. And I know that you guys have probably heard them all, that that it's not harmful, that it's better for you than smoking, or it's just harmless water vapor, those type of things. But we have recruited some experts. The first that you'll hear from is a physician here that's a pediatric doctor in Little Rock. His name is Dr. Josh O'Neill, and Stephanie and I were able to interview him, and he recorded his answers, so we put it together for you in a fun kind of video that really just answers questions about vaping in general, and he covers a lot of topics. And then secondly, we'll hear from MD Anderson, the Cancer Center, from Dr. Hawk and from Jennifer Kofer. And there's a great video that they've put together that we want to share with you. So if you will, just hang tight. This will be a shorter section, a shorter part of our conference today. But again, we are really spending a lot of time throughout every one of the parts of the conference talking about e-cigarettes and vaping. After we hear from Dr. O'Neill and from Dr. Hawk and Jennifer Kofer, you'll also find the next section of the Be Vape Free virtual field trip. And I hope that that will also help you kind of understand some of those myths and those false statements that have been made about vaping and e-cigarettes. So let's continue with our section here, and we will first hear from Dr. O'Neill.
My name is Dr. Josh O'Neill, and I'm a pediatrician at Little Rock Pediatric Clinic in Little Rock, Arkansas. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, where I went to high school at Heathwood Hall. I then graduated from Davidson College and learned medicine at the University of South Carolina School of Medicine. think young people often start vaping because their friends do it, and sometimes because they come from a home where the parents also use tobacco products, so vaping might be considered normal by the child. We also know that some young people begin vaping as a way to cope with feelings like sadness or stress. Many of the companies that sell e-cigarettes specifically target young people in their advertising. We know that vaping exposes your lungs to nicotine, flavorings, metal particles, and ultrafine particles, all of which can lead to breathing issues like cough and wheezing, shortness of breath, and an inability to run and exercise as well as other kids. Vaping very quickly leads to a child being addicted to nicotine, and we believe vaping will increase a child's risk of lung diseases and eventually cancer. Nicotine, which has been used as a pesticide, is a very dangerous toxin that is highly addictive, especially when vaping, because the concentrations of nicotine are often higher, and especially in young people, whose brains more easily become addicted to nicotine and other drugs. This addiction to nicotine is very hard to escape from, and often leads to smoking actual cigarettes as an adult. Vaping very quickly leads to addiction to nicotine and cravings to vape, which most teens are unable to resist. When a teen tries to stop vaping, they quickly show symptoms of withdrawal, which causes anger, anxiety, depression, and sometimes tremors or seizures. Many teens who start vaping find that they are not able to stop even when they really want to. EVALI stands for e-cigarette or vaping associated lung injury. This is when a young person gets lung damage from vaping, damage which can sometimes be permanent and can sometimes lead to death. Many young people who vape find that they are unable to keep up with their friends when playing sports. They cough and wheeze more and may even have asthma attacks while exercising. This is a big area of concern because we know that vaping shuts down the lung's ability to defend itself from infection, and I believe people who vape are at higher risk for getting sick from COVID-19. Evidence is building that secondhand e-cigarette vapor can put just as much nicotine into a bystander's lungs as it does to the person who is vaping. So in this sense, I believe e-cigarettes should be treated just like regular cigarettes and restricted in public areas. First, don't ever start, and if you have started, the sooner you stop, the easier it will be. Always speak with your parents and your pediatrician about vaping and ways to quit. There are many medical options to help with vaping cessation. You are never alone in this, and there's always a way out.
Okay, great information there from Dr. O'Neill. I especially like that he added those quitting resources at the end. We're going to have an entire section devoted to helping your friends and family members quit, but those are some great resources, and they're also available on the Project Prevent website, projectpreventar.org, under our resources. So some interesting topics he covered, even discussing COVID-19. Of course, that's an illness that we know attacks the lungs, and compromising your lungs or harming your lungs in any way could make any respiratory illness be that much worse. So great information there from Dr. O'Neill. Let's see what our friends from MD Anderson have to say. All right, MD Anderson.
E-cigarettes, vape pens, Juuls. They're often marketed as safe alternatives to smoking, but their cool designs, fun flavors, and the fact that they're easy to hide means it's not only smokers who want them, it's kids. And for kids, they're definitely not safe. Teens should absolutely not use Juuls, e-cigarettes, or any similar products. Here's why. When kids use Juuls or other e-cigarettes, they're getting a big dose of nicotine. This disrupts their brain development. It changes the connections between brain cells, causing problems with learning, mood, and impulse control. It makes depression and anxiety worse.
And as any smoker can tell you, nicotine is highly addictive. That makes it very difficult to quit e-cigarettes. And vaping makes it much more likely that kids will smoke real cigarettes later. It's true that a few e-cigarette brands don't contain nicotine, but most of them do. And all of them contain other dangerous chemicals like these. Formaldehyde, which is found in glue and embalming fluid. Diacetyl, which causes lung disease. Benzene, that's a carcinogen linked to leukemia. Some tests have also found metal particles in the e-cigarette vapor. The devices themselves can also be unsafe. They can explode.
The long-term effects of using e-cigarettes are unknown.
And because there are no standards, we don't know the ingredients in these products.
We don't want children to take unnecessary risks with their health
And begin a lifelong addiction to nicotine. Talk to your kids about e-cigarettes and how to say no to these harmful products.
Okay, so wow, Dr. O'Neill and Dr. Hawk both mention the effects that nicotine has on the brain. They both mention anxiety and depression. And we know that being a teenager can be hard enough. So having those effects on your brain, especially harming learning and concentration, can just be really damaging for you guys. So those are great reasons, of course, not to vape, but I do like that Dr. O'Neill mentioned if you have started, then it's certainly not too late to stop. Jennifer Kofer mentioned all of the chemicals that can be found in e-cigarettes and even those tiny metal particles that can travel into the lungs. Remember that your body is an amazing machine and it can repair itself if you give it time to heal. And I like to think about maybe the damage that you've done to your lungs if you have vaped could heal if you give it the time. And think about it as if you fall and you have a scab form on your elbow. If you doctor it, clean it, eventually it's going to heal, right? But imagine if you fell over and over and scraped your elbow in the same spot every day, several times a day, the scab's never going to heal, right? In fact, it's going to get worse. So the same concept with your lungs. So if you know people, if you are someone who has vaped or has been vaping, just know that if you're able to stop, which you can, then your lungs have a really great chance of repairing themselves. So I want to kind of share with you too some ways that our students, our Project Prevent students throughout the state have done some creative things to raise awareness about vaping. And Dr. O'Neill mentioned EVALI, and this was in the news a lot last fall and last winter. And the Centers for Disease Control started reporting the number of people that had died from vaping. Those are those vaping-related lung injuries. So these two students from Mountain Home Junior High made this very simple sign on a piece of paper that said, 7 people have died from vaping. Are you next? Stop vaping now to save yourself. Soon they had to cross out 7 and write 10, cross out 10 and write 12, 17, 21, 24, 29, 33. This sign went on and on until they reached somewhere between 60 and 70 deaths. And they just continued to cross it out and write it over and over on this very simple sign that they hung right in between the 2 bathrooms. So I thought that was just such a simple sign to put up with a huge impact. Some other things that our students have done, more signs for the bathroom. These are some other friends of ours from Mountain Home Junior High, and this was the year before last when they put signs in their bathroom that they created themselves, and it says, Default Skin Jonesy says, taking a hit in the restroom will deal 200 damage to your lungs. Do you want the victory royale? Don't vape. It's simple. Of course, I didn't know what this meant at first, but now I am more familiar with Fortnite, and I thought, what a great way to speak to, you know, people your own age. If you're in a junior high, especially a couple of years ago, how many friends did you know that were playing Fortnite all the time? So I thought that was a really creative message from these young guys. Aside from just signage, we've had some other students Here is two of our friends from Hot Springs Junior Academy that actually met with me for a meeting with teachers and other health professionals here in Little Rock, and they were part of a student panel just to answer questions about vaping, what they've seen in their school, kind of what they've heard from their friends, and kind of just getting that student perspective was really helpful for those adults to hear. And then this other picture of all of these students sitting on the steps here, if you can see, they're actually sitting outside their local radio station. And these are our friends from Green Forest High School. And they recorded a series of radio commercials just making people aware of the harmful effects of vaping and nicotine. So they were able to go into the studio and record these. So I thought that was also some really unique ways to reach people. So we'll talk a little bit more when we get to action steps about some of the different projects that our students have created, but I really just wanted to highlight some of those that I think are really unique and special when it comes to vaping and kind of helping, you know, get rid of some of those myths that we hear and start putting like good, truthful information out there. So to follow that up, I do want to play our second Be Vape Free virtual field trip video, and this is Vaping Myths Exposed. You'll hear some of the things that you've already heard from MD Anderson and Dr. O'Neill, and we will continue with that now. And it does take just a second for these videos to start, but I think that you'll really like this one.
Throughout the years, I heard a lot of things about vaping, and until I started to learn more about it, I actually believed most of them. Unfortunately, there's a lot of students out there that still believe that these myths are true.
Let's separate fact from fiction by exposing common myths about vaping and e-cigarettes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Garth Graham. I'm a cardiologist and I work with CVS Health. Today, we're going to talk about vaping and hopefully debunk some of the myths and misconceptions that we all have around vaping and how it impacts your health.
Is it true that e-cigarettes are harmless?
So, e-cigarettes might reduce harm for some people who smoke, but it doesn't mean that it's harmless. In fact, e-cigarettes contain a whole bunch of chemicals and the kinds of things that can damage your lung tissue. So it has nicotine, it has propylene glycol, it has all these kinds of things that get spread and aerosolized into the air. And then when you breathe those in, those kinds of chemicals cause direct damage to the tissue in your lungs. What does that do? It makes you susceptible to all kinds of potential current and future illnesses and does not allow your lungs to function as properly as they should. So e-cigarettes can be very, very dangerous for your lungs.
Is e-cig vapor just flavored water?
E-cigarettes contain no water at all. They contain aerosol, and the aerosol has chemicals. Those chemicals can come together in your lungs to form cancer-causing agents like formaldehyde.
Is it true that vaping doesn't lead to smoking?
That's actually false. In fact, many times vaping can be an on-ramp to smoking. Young adults who use e-cigarettes are 4 times as likely in the next 18 months to go on to cigarettes.
Is it true that e-cigarettes don't contain nicotine?
That's false. A study found that 99% of e-cigarettes that are sold contain nicotine. Those e-cigarettes that are sometimes called 0% nicotine still have been found to have traces of nicotine within them.
Is it true that you can't get addicted to e-cigarettes?
Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Young brains under the age of 25 are particularly susceptible to addiction. Nicotine can prime the brain for addiction later in life, and it may take 1, 2, or 3 more times to get over that addiction. So can we become addicted to e-cigarettes? Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. So again, some of the same information that we heard from the beginning, but I really like that this video points out how addictive e-cigarettes can be, and just some of those little things that I picked up on, that people who vape are 4 times more likely to become smokers of regular cigarettes within 18 months. Within a year and a half of vaping, you're way more likely to start smoking than someone who didn't vape at all. Just crazy. The Surgeon General for the United States has come out and said that e-cigarettes are not safe. They are addictive and they can harm brain development. And we've heard that before as well. So just keep these things in mind. And again, if you're following along in your guidebook, a lot of this information is there on pages 6 and 7 for Eve, out of our reach theme, e-cigarettes and vaping. We will continue with our next section. We're actually combining the A and the C, which will be action steps and chapters from our guidebook. But before we start that one, Stephanie is going to talk to you a little bit more about social media and how these companies have marketed to us and targeted young people so that they can recruit you to begin using these products too. So she'll cover lots of things about social media, and then we'll talk about action steps and chapters, which really go hand in hand. So you can see more wonderful examples of some of the things that our students have been able to do across the state. So we will see you next time for part 3.